voice of discovery and sharing.
The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas and critical opinions in Southeast Asia.
So we have invited a very special writer in our house. Her name is Wong Siew, and she is a freelance writer, and she's been writing for more than 25 years, especially on the travel and environment. So let's say good morning to her. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm fine.
I'm good, thank you. So could you briefly introduce yourself? I mean, I've just introduced you shortly, but you can elaborate more on what you've been doing so far.
Yes, I'm as you mentioned in your introduction, I'm a freelance writer, and I got my roots in writing professionally in journalism, and I worked in Singapore where I got excellent training. I actually didn't do a mass communication course. I didn't do a journalism course.
So what did you study?
Well, I did an arts degree, and it was in, one of my majors was English, as in literature and, that sort of thing, and my second major was actually economics.
Wow.
Yeah, but I came out and looked for jobs that were available at that time and got into journalism, if you can say, by chance. But I've been very lucky. I've had really excellent trainers, and that has set me on a path that I have been doing for over 2 decades now. So
that happened in Singapore?
Yes, that happened in Singapore. My first job was in Singapore, and I worked in a trade publishing firm, which meant that I was dealing with specialist magazines that went to certain trades, and the trades were actually broadcasting and telecommunications.
Right.
Very technical areas, yeah. But I wanted to become a journalist, so I came back to Malaysia and I worked for the Star for a while, yeah, and that got me got my reporting, got me into reporting, and that actually got me into environmental writing, because the Star is, I think, it continues to be about the only publication that focuses very, very seriously on the environment. So I worked for the Star for about 3.5 years, and then I came out to become a freelance writer. And I've been working on all sorts of media since then. I've worked on books, I've worked on brochures, I've done reports. I do stuff for all sorts of clients, from government to private sector. And then, of course, when the .com boom happened, like the original .com boom in 2000, I went up to Hong Kong. And I worked there for a while to create content for an international portal. And that was very interesting. And of course, with boom and bust of the .com, that happened to my website up there. It was a very interesting experience, and as always, I think people sort of jumped into the internet thinking they could make a lot of money out of that, and that failed, because you need, what they call the bricks and mortar experience behind it as well. Yeah? So now, of course, things have developed, they've matured, and I continue to be interested in online writing. So, basically just doing all sorts of things, even in broadcast as well. I've worked on films and documentaries and stuff like that as well. Yeah.
Right.
So kind of like a bit of anything and everything. Yeah. And so that's where I am at the moment.
It sounds very dynamic, what you've been doing so far, other than writing stuff. And then your focus is mainly on traveling and also environmental issues, I will say. But other than that, you mentioned shortly you also did documentary and you also did the broadcasting. But in Malaysia, how is it like to be a freelance writer in Malaysia? Is it easy, or how is the perception?
I think the important thing is to do good work and create very good relationships and deliver on time. I think those are my 3 mantras, if you like.
I see.
And at the end, I think everybody needs writers. I think I'm very lucky to be in this field, and because I'm flexible and I'm curious about anything and everything, I've opened up myself to all sorts of media. But at the end of the day, I think if you've got strong basics, you've got a good work ethic, I think there will be jobs.
Well, in terms of talking about jobs, right, especially for writers, I mean, before, of course, our older generation, they used to buy books from bookshops and they have physical copies, but now there's a transition from physical copies to online platforms. How is it like for freelancer writers like you to have this transition sort of period? Do you tend to go to the online platforms more nowadays?
Well, I think that print is not going to die out anytime, despite what some people say.
Yeah.
Even with e-readers and e-books and stuff like that. But of course, everybody's online now. Everybody reads. Like, I read only online news, for instance. I don't buy newspapers anymore. Yeah, exactly, which is a bit sad. But I think knowing and seeing where the trend is now, and you know, people reading more and more, not just online, but reading mobile devices, you know, not even reading stuff on desktop anymore. You kind of have to, as a freelancer and, you know, somebody who runs their own business, I have to keep up with what I think the trends are going to be. So while books will continue to be important, and I love writing books, I have decided to go very seriously again into this whole .com thing, if you like. I was very lucky to be based in Germany for a short while between 2008 and 2012.
Right.
Yeah. And I didn't intend to basically study Germany. I was in Berlin, which is a great city. But what I did end up doing was taking a lot of photographs and taking a lot of notes and really exploring the city. And at the end of the 4 years, I have like thousands of photographs and a lot of material about different aspects of Germany, including the environmental movement.
Right.
You know, what's been happening there. And as a result of that, and also wanting to go back into this whole thing about producing online content, I created a website which I've been working on for the last 1 year, which is a combination of text and images. And creating different stories using an online platform. And I love it because it's open. Like working with books, working with articles, you're always limited by space.
Right.
Whereas, well, online, like anything and everything is literally possible.
Yep.
So that's what I did for the last 1 year, is to really look at what the medium it was able to allow me, and I love it. I have to say, I really love writing online, and the idea really also is a little bit to go against social media. I know Facebook provides a very convenient, ready-made platform for people to express themselves. But I wanted to go a little bit against them and see, you know, with my experience as a professional writer, what I could do with breaking away from, you know, conforming to, you know, Facebook and all that. It's a little bit like a print as well. You know, it's almost like a newspaper. So you have to write, for example, 800 words, and that's all the space they will give you.
Right.
And Facebook kind of constrains you a little bit as well. So yeah, so I've just been experimenting with this website for the last 1 year.
So with this limitless space that you have, and then you can do, like, you can upload pictures and articles and wordings, or you can basically do whatever you want. And that it is very heavily related to blogs. Blogs, basically, you can just do whatever you want. You can express yourself on any issues, any of your interest. So, we are talking about environmental issue, and also in the conjunction with the KLEFF coming up very soon. You will be holding a workshop on green blogs. So could you elaborate more on that? What's green blogs all about?
Sure. Well, as you rightly said, a blog is basically a space online where you can write about anything and everything. Choosing to write about green issues or environmental issues is just one of the areas that people passionate about doing something about the environment can do. So the idea for the blog came about because Yasmin from
KLEFF,
who's running KLEFF, approached me to do something on environmental storytelling.
Right.
And after discussion, I thought let's go blog, because again the target is young people, so we're targeting people between the ages of 17 and 24, and really that's your medium. That's basically your newspaper, your TV, your everything, you know. And so let's look at blogs. And I think a lot of young people post, I mean, they're active on Facebook. I'm sure a lot of them actually are bloggers. But let's look at this specific thing in conjunction with the film festival, whose theme is environment. And let's see if we can draw young people who are interested and passionate about the environment, who are passionate about writing and who have writing skills, to come in and create blogs or look at blogs in a very detailed detailed way with someone with a lot of experience writing.
Right.
So I guess my approach is going back to basics. What actually makes good writing? If you write well, and earlier on before the broadcast, we were talking about how do you, the amount of noise there is.
Right.
You have a platform that is theoretically open to the world.
Yep.
How do you make your little voice heard above all the noise that's out there? And one of the keys to that is good writing. If you're writing a blog can of course just be video, or it can be just images. Using Instagram, using a different platform, one of the many platforms that are available. But if you produce really good stuff, people will want to follow you, they will want to retweet, or they will want to, spread the word, that sort of thing. And that's what that's the approach that I've decided to take, is to go back to basics and look at the tools, or give some tools that can help a person create something really good.
Well, that's really good advice here. But when I think about the writing, it's also a form of an art, because it's not just just because you can speak a language or just because you can write doesn't mean that you can produce a good article. It's a sort of art that you need to just have a first draft, then you have to amend it over and over again, make sure it's attractive enough for readers to read and comprehend what you write after all. But when it comes to writing on certain topics, and we're talking about environmental issues, generally, not many people out there in public, they may not be interested in the environmental issues. So having them read your article is another challenging as well. So could you elaborate more on that? Like how bloggers can attract their articles for readers to read there on the site or website or blogs?
Okay, so there's maybe two ways of looking at this. Well, the first one is the creation of really good content. And as you said, some people have it. Some people are natural born writers. Yeah. Just like some people are very, very good visually, and some people are very good at talking. So if you have a natural ability, then you're really lucky. And basically what the workshop will aim to do is to try and hone that and just give you tools.
Right, okay.
I think everybody needs tools. Even I continue to, look out for different ways to write better, to improve my writing, to look at a medium and how to use that medium to the best of my ability in order to convey a message or to write a story or to share something that I feel that I would like to share.
Right.
So the workshop looks at providing some tools so that even if you are a very good writer, you can come along and go back to basics.
Right.
Yeah, and just see, because I think people with natural ability kind of don't think about it, they just write and then it just comes out
because they rely on their natural ability.
Yeah, exactly, but with the tools, people who are interested in writing but feel that they don't know enough can also use these tools as building blocks.
Right.
I'm not promising to make them brilliant writers in 2 hours, but I'm hopeful that this will be a good start, and just some really basic building blocks that actually I continue to use on a daily basis as a writer today. Now that's one. So getting really good content. How do you get your message out? I think is don't try and be. Well, one of the other things I'm going to try and do is to help people be clear about what they want to say.
Right. Okay.
So there's no point saying I want to write about the environment. Okay. What aspect of the environment?
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, I want to save the animals. Oh, okay. That's a good point. So how do you want to save the animals? So it's basically asking questions like that and helping people sort of hone in on what it is they're really interested in. Or you could do a collective. You could do you join up with 3 other people, your good friends who are really passionate about a topic, and let's do something. Let's start a blog, and then you have different voices, and if you've got full-time jobs, or if you're busy studying, you're still a student and you're at university, then you kind of spread the load a little bit as well. So there's again very different ways of approaching getting something out, getting a blog done. And then of course if you want to reach out to a lot of people, again there's many different ways of doing it. You could contact an organization, for example, like Eco Nights.
Right.
I hope I'm not putting Yasmin in a spot here, but you could look at different organizations like even newspapers or online, I call them newspaper, online news outlets, and see if they might be interested in letting you ride on them, now as we had talked about, the kind of openness of the internet allows for so many different ways of collaborating, of sharing, and of just try, it's basically just try.
For sure.
And you don't have to limit yourself to Malaysia. That's the fantastic thing about going online.
All right. Well, I'm having conversation with Wong Siew, so we'll be coming back after this short break, so stay tuned.
The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas and critical opinions in Southeast Asia.
Welcome back to Durian ASEAN, the voice of discovery and sharing. So I've been speaking with Wong Siew, and she's a freelance writer for 25 years, and especially featuring on traveling and environmental issues. So she's got a huge and very dynamic experience when it comes to writing. And of course, in conjunction with the KLEFF in the coming month in October, she'll be holding a workshop for 2 hours. So please catch up this workshop coming up. We'll be talking about this workshop later on. But right now, we're going to come back to her and perhaps let her share her experiences being a writer internationally. So let's come back to our nation, Malaysia. In Malaysia, generally, how many people, or in terms of population, do people care about environmental issues? And then when articles are produced, what are the feedbacks so far?
Yeah, that's that's a tricky question to try and answer. Do people care about the environment? Yes, I think in the sense that for me, the environment is always linked up to, especially in countries like Malaysia, development.
Right.
So it's very hard to isolate. So do people care about the way the country is developed? I think that certainly in the last generation, maybe in the 80s, in the 90s, in the early 2000s, was when there was a big spurt of growth in Malaysia. And so it was very much about, being as good as developed nations. We continue to have that aspiration. The thing is that now I think people are a lot more aware of balancing that.
I see.
Which is why terms like sustainability are so hot at the moment.
The reason I'm asking you is because, for example, Japan and Korea, or even other developed countries in the European countries, people have been practicing in terms of saving environments. For example, even dividing trash bins already. It's a part of their lives. But in Malaysia, it's just recently it's implemented, and people are just about to practice all that. So the culture is not there yet. So that's what I'm asking in terms of writers, when you write articles and related to environment, how are the feedback so far? And how do people give you the opinions based on the articles that you've produced?
I guess in terms of public general articles that target the public, if you look at the range of publications that are available, the Star continues to be about the only newspaper that covers environment on a very serious level. They have a special section, they have a special editor whom I have a lot of respect for, and every Tuesday there's going to be a massive article, a lead article in their feature section on it, as well as a whole series of different articles. But you can see other publications, whether online or not, don't really take environment seriously, if you like.
Importance of it, you mean?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you're looking at the push factor, there certainly isn't enough.
All right.
I think in Malaysia, amongst Malaysian publications, whether online or in print. Having said that, all this information is available online from other countries. In Japan, in Korea, there's a huge push, for sustainable consumption, sustainable development, and all the rest of it. I think why am I struggling to answer this question? I think on the one hand, if you look at the older generation, people maybe in their 70s and 80s,
right,
they came from a kind of lifestyle that was not so consumption based.
All right.
Right? And, consumerism is actually one of the big drivers for pollution, for the use of resources, destruction of forests, and so on and so forth, And so we're looking at maybe, I guess, within maybe 2 generations,
right,
if you like, there's been a huge change in the way Malaysians live their lives.
Oh, that's very true, yes.
At the same time, those who are in their 70s and 80s, my parents, for example, my father, a little bit continues to live like, it's kind of this war mentality.
Right,
like,
okay,
where he saves everything. He recycles. He doesn't just, he composts, he does all these things. And, he's still alive, and he's the way he lives is an example to me, so I think that generation is still there. I think those values are still around to a certain extent. So this whole thing about recycling, but people don't even bother recycling now. Plastic bags are disallowed in supermarkets only 1 day a week. Stuff like that. It kind of is a little bit of a reminder, I guess, of the values that like my father's generation had and continue to have, So, things like recycling and reduce, it's always reduce before you reuse, So reduce consumerism, reduce the use of resources and all that sort of thing are maybe just reminders. I'm not sure. Maybe people in their 20s and all that, they just don't, they're so distant from those values that maybe it is time that we need to push extra hard as communicators, as writers, as newspapers, as publications, that we need to push those things through a lot more, and maybe say, just go and talk to your grandfather,
right,
or go and talk to your grandmother.
Because it's very interesting when I see the patterns in younger generation and older generation. If I need to make a comparison between those two, is of course we can take examples from older generation, learn from them, but at the same time we are pretty much pampered by older society, that if we don't do it, somebody will do it, and then we are not the only one, and we see people just throwing treasures anyways, so me just doing it wouldn't harm the environment that much. That's the mindset that the younger generation usually do have. So it is very important to have the older's awareness, or even reading about articles, and to make sure that what we have been doing to the environment, positively or negatively. So that's when I asked you the question, what is your thoughts and as a writer in Malaysia generally? So in terms of getting feedbacks from audience when you produce articles, could you share any fun experiences or any memorable experiences that you would love to share with our listeners?
Yeah, well, I'm a little bit older than you are. And I used to write for The Star. I started writing before this thing called social media came into being.
Correct.
And we used to just write in the dark and not really know what, people never bothered writing and telling us, how they felt about anything. So journalism as a whole has changed.
It's more like two-way communication for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. Things have changed completely, and everybody can be a journalist now, really, which is also the other thing that's new and that's different,
Correct.
Now, is there necessarily better quality writing now? I'm not sure, because sometimes you look through, I think this the whole thing about being allowed to be anonymous when you post comments might not necessarily be such a good thing.
Yeah.
So does that make the quality, having instant feedback, does that necessarily make the writing any more, better quality?
Right.
I'm not so sure about that. I really am not. So, I guess the way I measure how effective I am is the ability to get jobs. Touch wood. And if people like my writing, and people will publish my writing, and I can get jobs, then I'm assuming I'm barking up the right tree.
Well, then let's move on to your experience more specifically. When you think about environment, it's really huge topic. Like you mentioned about animals, saving animals, or even save environment, trees, forest deforestation, and endless. What is your specific topic so far and you've been focusing on?
I'm very focused on conservation. Mm-hmm. That's something that has interested me almost from the time I started writing about the environment.
But what made you interested in the conservation from the first place?
Well, as a junior journalist in the Star, I think I was a bit lost when I first joined the newspaper. Mm-hmm. And I think a few months after I began, I met a very, very persuasive and very charming communications person from WWF.
Oh, right.
He's no longer there now. And he got me really excited about the environment and
that's
about
interesting.
Conservation. Yeah. So I think meeting people and going to talks and exposing yourself to different sorts of people is a really key thing to getting people
I totally
interested.
agree with that. Yeah, for sure. Yes.
So while you may be able to persuade people with your writing or with your radio broadcast or with good programs and all the rest of it, when you meet people, I think that actually tends to be a huge influence. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so because of that, and he was just really keen to push all the programs that WWF had. And here was this kind of like naive journalist who was like a little bit lost and wanting something to write about. It really worked. So I ended up giving them quite a lot of publicity, and from them I was introduced to the whole NGO movement, activism, and all the rest of it. And conservation remains a very big thing for me, which is why the big issue now, which is climate change.
Yep.
I'm not saying that I'm not so into it because it affects conservation. It affects the forest, species loss, and all the rest of it at the end of the day, and as you said, it's not only a big area. Environment is not just a big area, it's also very intricately tied. And earlier on I had mentioned when you talk about environment, you talk about development, you have to talk about it in the same breath, because it's humans and nature, and human impact on nature and nature's impact on humans through huge disasters like the tsunami or earthquakes and stuff like that. So it's this very complex, intricate link. So by saying that I'm interested in conservation doesn't mean that I'm not interested in climate change. I can't afford to be, because I have to understand how all these things are linked. At the same time, I mentioned consumerism earlier on, and that's also tied to conservation, because at the end, what you consume, and we talk about things like shark's fin, the consumption of shark's fin, has a direct impact on the numbers of sharks there are in the oceans.
For sure, yes.
Things like that.
That's very interesting. Then how about your experience in Germany? I mean, you've talked about very shortly before in the introduction that you lived in Berlin, and of course you had hundreds or thousands of photos there for 4 years. So how was your experience basically in Germany, and what's their concern over there environmentally?
Okay, I did try to learn a little bit about the environmental movement and how the Germans sort of approach the environment and environmental issues. You can see that they are more advanced in terms of things like recycling, in terms of green buildings, in terms of energy use. That really was what I went to look for, and I actually found it. And it's very interesting, the sort of initiatives they have, and government plays such a big role in helping to push environmentalism there. So, for example, and they're sometimes sort of laughed at, the Germans are sometimes laughed at for doing this. If you look at mineral water bottles in Germany, they have a little barcode which you can actually, and when you bring these bottles to a supermarket, there are actually little slots there, and you put your mineral water bottles there, and a little receipt will come out, and you actually get paid. for recycling your mineral water bottles.
Right.
That's in every supermarket in Germany.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
It's so great, and that's why you never see any empty mineral water bottles lying around in parks or in rubbish bins.
That's very smart.
Everybody recycles them because even if you get like 2 cents a bottle or whatever, you can use that and then you can buy something in the supermarket.
For sure.
And so I would totally not throw away, mineral water bottles. So things like that. But you need government intervention. You need corporate intervention, and you need, like, for example, the supermarkets to buy into this whole thing, and you need the recyclers to also say, yes, we will pay people to collect these bottles for us. So it's very holistic over there, which is fantastic. And of course, the other big thing that I looked at was the whole nuclear movement.
Okay.
And the environmental movement in Germany began out of protests against the use of nuclear power in Germany. And I find it very interesting that in Malaysia, because of the am I allowed to say Linas?
Yes, please go ahead. It's all right. Yeah,
because of the Linas facility in Pahang, that this movement not only grew but grew to become a political movement because the activists who were involved in protesting the Linas facilities actually stood for election in the last election. So I find it a very interesting parallel, and certainly in Germany it has gotten to the stage where waste is transported back. It's kind of like processed in France. Nuclear waste is processed in France, and Germany until today have not found a place to store their nuclear waste.
Right. Wow.
And they've got, I don't know, X number of nuclear power stations and all the rest of it, and nobody wants it in their backyard. So they have these so-called temporary areas,
Temporary areas,
temporary areas, and the waste has to be transported by railway track to a town and then transported onto trucks through this most beautiful. And we were actually there recently in this area to where the temporary waste facility is, and the trucks have to go on roads through villages and past rivers and all that. It's just ridiculous. So you think, like, on the one hand you have things, for example, like the mineral water recycling idea or program, which is fantastic, and on the other hand you have this enormously dangerous thing called nuclear waste, which they don't actually know what to do with.
Oh no.
So if Germany can't figure out a way of doing it, I can't imagine. There's been a lot of talk of bringing nuclear power to Malaysia.
So you're saying it's until now they're still figuring out.
Because people are saying, shut down the nuclear facilities in Germany, and every time this waste is brought back into Germany, there's all this protests lined up, even the farmers are involved in it. They'll use their tractors and they'll block the road so that the trucks can't go past, and people will chain themselves to the railway tracks. I mean, it's phenomenal. And it's not just these so-called tree huggers. There are doctors, there are politicians, there are housewives, there are students, there are everybody is involved in this anti-nuclear.
So is it more like the conflict between those people and also the government? And how is the government approaching to all these problems at the moment?
Well, they already committed to nuclear waste, and I think after Fukushima, it scared them so much.
All right.
There was already so much pressure, against the use of nuclear power that they decided, okay, no more. We're going to shut down nuclear power stations by a certain year. I forget now what the year is, but they actually have committed to a year. And of course, there's a big problem now because there's a lot of compensation that needs to be paid out to these energy companies. And also, does Germany have enough power to replace the power that's being generated by the nuclear facilities, even though it's a very long rollout? So one of the things that they're looking at in Germany was wind power, but the coast is up in the north, and a lot of factories and stuff are down south.
Right.
How are you going to pipe these energy
link them together,
from wind power, or using wave power, right? How are you going to pipe it all the way down? So you need to build power lines, and then there's another big issue that's like, again, not in my backyard. I don't want these ugly lines running through this pristine, countryside that I've chosen to live in and all that. So it's always negotiation all the time, and I guess this is the way that Malaysia and maybe ASEAN also has to go through. You have to constantly negotiate, and you have to adapt, and there's going to be a lot of resistance, whether from government or from the local people or organizations or companies or whatever, but it has to be taken one step at a time, I guess, and you need political will. You need political will, and you really need grassroots movements as well. So it's a combination of everything. It's quite complex.
Well, coming back to Malaysia, we've been having this problem called haze. Air pollution level is really, really bad at the moment. But then when you look at the government approach and also public, there are quite a number of activists who are against the haze, and they're asking for more better approach from the government. What's your thought in this from the Malaysian perspectives? Because it doesn't look like haze is going away anytime soon, and it's coming from Indonesia, and Singapore is also heavily affected, and of course public schools are closed from today. In Malaysia, just a couple of weeks ago, the government announced, yes, public schools will be closed. But other than that, what do you see? Any other approaches from the government side?
It is a very tricky situation because, and now we come to ASEAN, because of the policy of non-interference.
Right.
Which all the governments have agreed to, and until last year, I think Singapore just got really fed up because the haze was really bad last year in Singapore. We Malaysians have the capacity of accepting a lot of things, including not having good air to breathe, including not being able to send your kids to school.
Yeah, exactly.
We put up with a lot. We are very patient people,
High tolerance level.
Very high tolerance level, exactly. So I guess the only thing that can be done from the perspective of the public is just write to your MPs, write to your aduns, and hassle them, and just get them to do something, just like this is where political consciousness has to be there amongst the ordinary Malaysians as well. What can the government do? It's hard. Apparently, I just heard on the radio that they've been trying. I think I forget now. One of our ministers was supposed to meet one of the ministers in Indonesia, and it's been postponed twice because of the haze.
Yep.
So
it's so bad.
It's crazy. You know? It's absolutely crazy. And it's very hard. What we can do, what could the government do? They've already offered to send firefighting crews over. They've offered to land planes every year. That's something that's being done. But one of the root causes of the haze is the burning of peat. And perhaps we could send or offer to send, whether it's NGOs or government or whoever, to send expertise over to try and sort out proper management of peat. When you drain peat and when you plant on peat and you don't manage water levels properly, you're going to have spontaneous fires coming up. You're going to have fires burning underground. You're going to have this thick, choking smoke, which is then blown all over the place. I mean, Indonesians are suffering as well. So they're not happy either. But it's a very complex thing. It's very, very complex.
Right.
So what can we do here? Perhaps the other thing we could do is to look out for open burning here in Malaysia. So one of the things that has been happening in the past as well, just reading news reports and everything, is that our own peat is also burning.
Right.
So we have to look after our own fire starters or the management of our own peatlands and stuff like that. And again, just the normal person or any blogger or anybody who's passionate about this kind of thing, start a blog, start a Facebook page, start a group or whatever, and have people just discussing this, and taking some action through activism or whatever.
In addition to that, I strongly believe in education. Educating public is another one. And with this, the writing, having workshops for this KLEFF is very important to educate. Even though it's just a short while, a couple of hours, you'll be able to educate a number of people there. So we'll take another short break. When we come back, we'll focus on the workshop at KLEFF.
The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas and critical opinions in Southeast Asia.
Welcome back to Durian ASEAN, the voice of discovery and sharing. And I've been speaking with Wong Siew. She is a freelance writer for 25 years, especially on travel and environment. So Siew, can you elaborate your workshop at KLEFF in October?
Sure, Grace. All the details about the workshop are available on the KLEFF website. Mm-hmm. So you just go to http://ecofilmfest.my. You go to attractions, and all the workshops will be listed there. So you just go to the one which says green blogging, mm-hmm. and all the information will be there. The workshop's going to be held on Sunday, the 18th of October, from 9:30 to 12, and it will be at the White Box at Publica. You can also register from that page, mm-hmm. and I think they're charging a flat fee of 50 ringgit per participant, mm-hmm. and it will be about 2 hours and 15 minutes. And just bring along your own smartphone or iPad, something that you're happy to type into. Mm-hmm. And basically, the workshop will cover very basic stuff, as I said.
Right.
I always like to go back to basics.
Back to basic, yeah.
And even if I'm hoping to attract people who are good at writing, mm-hmm. Preferably English, mm-hmm. but I'm not going to turn anybody who's good at writing in Malay or in Mandarin.
Right.
But the workshop will be conducted in English.
Mm-hmm.
So the basics I'll be going back to would be what is blogging, how to find and develop your voice, telling a story. I'm going to give some basic building blocks, and then you're actually going to get a chance. Participants are actually going to get a chance to go out and do a story, mm-hmm. write a blog. It's just a little one, but at least you've got the practical experience of doing that, and it's also our way to contribute to and be part of the larger KLEFF. Mm-hmm. Because a whole lot of stuff is happening, workshops and performances as well as the films, and there's going to be a green market there as well.
Right.
So, and then at the end, we'll just review and share.
It's very interesting. And then I can package this one as a Green Blog one-on-one session with Wong Siew here at KLEFF.
That's it, exactly. Yes.
Well, but then I'm sure people will feel that, there should be another session, because they just touch on the back to basic, all this basic stuff foundation, which is very important. But would you like to plan another session of course, it will go really successfully?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always happy to develop and to work, especially with young people, mm-hmm. and on the environment, which is something that's so close to my heart. It would depend. Yeah, let's see how the first workshop goes, and if there is interest, mm-hmm. And I'm very happy to develop something else or mm-hmm. a larger program for this sort of thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So before we end our session, Siew, do you have any messages to our listeners regarding the environmental issues, what we need to do, or any, especially to writers out there?
Well, if you are passionate about any issue mm-hmm. to do with the environment, if you care a lot about stray animals, if you want to do something in your school or in your university, go ahead. I think just do. Don't wait for somebody else to start a program or to start a project or to start a blog. Mm-hmm. Write. If you have the ability to write and you feel that you have a voice that you have something to say, mm-hmm. and you want to develop your voice, just go ahead. It doesn't matter. It's not about writing especially. Let me focus on writing. It's not about getting a million hits.
Right.
It's not about going viral.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a good photographer, it's not about that at all. It's about putting your voice, doing something, mm-hmm. Even if it's a photograph or Instagram or whatever,
right.
and just sharing it. Mm-hmm. And you can now with social media and with the internet, the barriers to spreading your message are really, really gone, mm-hmm. and you literally have the world there. How you're going to get heard is another issue, but just put it up, and just do something and just don't wait.
Right. Well, thank you so much for the interview, Siew. Don't forget to participate her workshop on 18th of October, which is on Sunday from 9:30 to 12. Yeah. And then it will be at the White Box Publica. So do check the website out, and there are a whole list of workshops out there. So do participate and then bring the awareness of the environment. Thank you.